Welcome to Silent Case Files. Tonight we step into a grand house of mourning where silence speaks louder than words and grief may be the perfect disguise. A widow sits in the shadows, dressed in black, claiming she has lost something priceless, not gold, not jewels, but a ledger, a simple book of numbers, yet powerful enough to destroy lives. This is the widow's missing ledger, a Hercule-style mystery where secrets are written in ink and every page hides a motive. Because in this story, what's missing is not just evidence, it's the truth itself. Who took the ledger, and what was so dangerous inside it? Was it stolen for fortune, or to bury a scandal forever? As our detective follows the trail through locked drawers, whispered lies, and elegant deception, one question remains: was this theft, or the first move in a much darker crime? Stay with us, because some books were never meant to be found. This is Silent Case Files, and the case begins now. It is a curious thing, I have often observed, how the most dreadful tragedies may unfold beneath the most immaculate surfaces. One may sip tea from delicate china, admire the perfect symmetry of a rose garden, and listen to the soft murmur of polite conversation, while death, like an uninvited guest, sits quietly in the next room. It was precisely such an atmosphere that surrounded the beginning of what Poirot later described rather dramatically as a most poisonous little affair. I had not seen Hercule Poirot in quite some time. He had been enjoying, so he informed me, a period of much-needed rest. His health, his moustaches, and his nerves all required careful preservation. He had taken lodgings for a fortnight at a country house belonging to Lady Harcourt, a widowed aristocrat of considerable wealth, and I might add, equally considerable self-regard. I, being between engagements and eager for a change from London's dreary dampness, had accepted an invitation to join him. Thus it was that I found myself at Wycliffe Manor, a grand estate nestled among the rolling hills of Sussex, its stone walls grey with age, its windows gleaming with propriety, and its inhabitants polished to the point of unnatural perfection. Poirot, of course, thrived in such surroundings. "The English countryside," he remarked as we arrived, adjusting his hat with precision. "It is charming, yes. But always I suspect, Hastings, that beneath the charm there is, how do you say, the mud. You see mud everywhere, Poirot." "Not everywhere," he corrected mildly, "only where it exists." Lady Harcourt greeted us in the drawing-room with the composed dignity of a woman who believed herself incapable of being surprised. She was perhaps in her late 50s, tall and upright, dressed in black satin that seemed less mourning and more declaration. Her face was pale, severe, yet undeniably handsome. "Hercule Poirot," she said, extending a gloved hand. "How good of you to come." "Madam." Poirot bowed. To refuse such hospitality would be a crime against good manners. Lady Harcourt allowed the faintest of smiles, and Captain Hastings as well, always faithful. I flushed slightly. "You flatter me, Lady Harcourt." "Flattery," Poirot murmured, "is only dangerous when it is believed." Her gaze sharpened. "You have not changed, Monsieur Poirot." "No," he agreed. "And yet, everything changes." There was, I thought, something odd in her expression then, something guarded. But before I could ponder it further, she gestured toward the others in the room. "You must meet my guests. We are a small party." A small party indeed, but as events would prove, a dangerously complete circle. Nearest the fireplace stood Mr. Lionel Brooke, Lady Harcourt's solicitor, a thin man with careful eyes, the sort who seemed to weigh every word before releasing it. Beside him sat Miss Celia Harcourt, the widow's niece, a striking young woman of perhaps 25. She possessed beauty, certainly, but her beauty carried sharpness, like glass. On the settee lounged Major Rupert Ashford, a retired officer with a loud laugh and restless fingers. His charm seemed practiced, his ease slightly too deliberate. At the window, staring out as though longing to escape, was Mrs. Evelyn March, Lady Harcourt's companion, a soft-spoken woman with melancholy eyes, whose nervous hands betrayed more than her calm voice. Lastly, hovering near the tea-tray like a shadow, was Mr. Giles Fenwick, the estate's accountant, a quiet man with ink-stained fingers and the anxious air of one perpetually afraid of making an error. Poirot greeted each with polite warmth, though I noticed, as I always did, that his eyes missed nothing. Lady Harcourt seated herself. "Tea?" she asked. Poirot declined. "I prefer first, madam, to observe." Major Ashford chuckled. Observe. Good Lord, Poirot, are you already investigating something? Poirot smiled faintly. One is always investigating, Major, even at tea. The Major raised his cup. Well, I can assure you nothing criminal happens at Wycliffe Manor. Poirot's eyes flicked briefly toward Lady Harcourt. No, he said softly. Not yet. The following morning began with such ordinary serenity that it seemed almost offensive. Breakfast was served promptly at 8. Lady Harcourt appeared precisely at 8:05, dressed in morning black, her posture rigid. At 9:30 she retired to her private study, a room, she explained, where she managed her affairs. It was, she said, her habit. Order was everything. Poirot approved. But at 11 o'clock, order shattered. A scream echoed through the upper corridor. I rose instantly, nearly upsetting my chair. Poirot, however, did not startle. He merely set down his coffee cup with the care of a man placing the final piece in a puzzle. That, he said quietly, is the sound of disorder. We hurried into the hall. Mrs. March stood trembling at the study door, one hand pressed to her mouth. It's Lady Harcourt. Oh, God, someone. Poirot pushed gently past her. The study was immaculate. Books aligned, papers stacked, and Lady Harcourt sat at her desk. Still, too still. Her head had fallen sideways, resting unnaturally against the leather chair. On the polished wood near her right hand lay a small porcelain cup, overturned. Poirot crossed the room at once. He touched her wrist. Then he looked up. Madam is dead. Celia Harcourt gave a strangled gasp. Major Ashford swore under his breath. Mr. Brooke went pale. Mrs. March sank into a chair. Only Fenwick remained frozen, staring as though his mind could not comprehend what his eyes had seen. Poirot's voice was calm. She has been poisoned. I stared at him. Poisoned, but there's no sign of struggle. Poirot nodded. Exactly. Then, with slow precision, he examined the desk. His gaze sharpened. One thing, he murmured. What is it? I asked. Poirot pointed to the open drawer. It was empty. The widow's ledger, he said softly. The most important book in this house is missing. The crime had begun. A lady of wealth, dead without violence, a house full of suspects, and a single missing object, one that Poirot already understood, carried more weight than gold. As he stood there, his moustaches bristling slightly, he spoke with quiet certainty. Ah, Hastings, this is not merely murder. He looked at the empty drawer. It is murder with purpose. Poirot did not permit the smallest flutter of haste to spoil the moment. While the others clustered at the doorway like startled birds, he remained by the desk, his head slightly on one side, as though listening to the silence for a confession. Ring for Dr. Ellison, I said. And the police? Yes, yes, murmured Poirot, but his eyes were on the little cup. He lifted it delicately, sniffed, and set it down again exactly as it had been, as if even death must respect symmetry. Then he drew out his handkerchief and wiped an invisible smudge upon the blotter. Mr. Brooke found his voice first. This is monstrous. Lady Harcourt was in perfect health yesterday. In perfect order also, said Poirot. That is important. Celia stepped nearer, her face drained of colour, yet her chin thrust forward with defiance. Who would do such a thing? Aunt Sylvia had no enemies. Major Ashford gave a harsh laugh. No enemies? Money breeds them. Mrs. March shivered. Please don't. Fenwick swallowed. The ledger, he said hoarsely. You think someone took it after... Poirot turned to him. Monsieur Fenwick, you know what is in that ledger? Accounts, he muttered. The ordinary business of an estate. Ordinary. Poirot repeated, and I felt he was tasting the lie. He addressed the room gently. Captain Hastings will send for the doctor and the constable. No one leaves the house until we understand. It is not the law, but it is good sense. Ashford bristled. You can't keep us prisoner. Poirot's mildness did not alter. You are free to go, Major, if you wish to explain to the police why you walked away from a poisoned woman and a missing book. The Major's mouth tightened. He said no more. I went out to give the necessary instructions, and when I returned, Dr. Ellison was already clattering up the drive in his motor. He confirmed Poirot's conclusion briskly, speaking of some nasty alkaloid, and he glanced at the cup with professional distaste. Was she alone? Mrs. March answered in a thin voice. She dismissed me at 9:30. She said she wished to write letters. And you didn't see anyone go in? No. I was in the morning room. The corridor door was open. I would have heard. Poirot's eyes softened. Would you, madam? Or would you hear only what you expect to hear? Before she could reply, there came a sharp knock, and Constable Briggs entered, stout, respectful, and already uneasy in the presence of so much polish. Behind him, by ill chance, came Inspector Mallory from the nearest town, summoned by telephone. Mallory was brisk certainty in human form, with a jaw trained for verdicts. He listened, strode into the study, and seized upon the obvious. Poison in the tea. That means whoever served it. Who brings Lady Harcourt her tray? All eyes swung to Mrs. March. I did, she said. At 10 precisely. I always do. Mallory nodded, satisfied. And you were the only one with access. Poirot coughed politely. Pardon, Inspector. In an English household there are always many hands. The kitchen, the pantry. The maid says. Mrs. March took it up herself. Mallory snapped. And she admits she was alone with the victim earlier. It's tidy, isn't it? Poirot's moustaches quivered. Tidy things are often arranged by someone who likes tidiness. Mallory ignored him. We'll search her room. We'll question the household. Mrs. March's eyes filled, but no tears fell. I didn't do it, she whispered. I swear. Poirot stepped close, his voice low. Madame, you did not weep when you found her. You screamed. That is different. She stared at him. What do you mean? I mean, said Poirot gently, that your fear was already there before you opened the door. Mallory made an impatient gesture. Save it for the courtroom. I'll have her under watch, as Briggs led Mrs. March away. Celia sprang forward. This is absurd. Evelyn has been with my aunt for 5 years. Brooke spoke quickly. Lady Harcourt's affairs, there may be clauses in her will. If Mrs. March is arrested, the estate— Poirot's eyes darted to him. Ah, we speak already of the estate. Yet the body is not even cold. The solicitor coloured. I beg your pardon. Poirot turned back to the desk and opened the lower drawer again. From the side, almost invisible unless one knew to look, he drew out a thin strip of torn paper caught against the wood. He held it between finger and thumb. Upon it, in Lady Harcourt's firm hand, were 3 words, Fenwick, do not. Poirot looked up, and his gaze met the accountant's frightened eyes. His lips moved, but no sound emerged, only a swallow. Tell me, Monsieur Fenwick, he said softly, what was Lady Harcourt about to forbid you to do? Fenwick's mouth opened and closed like that of a fish suddenly dragged from deep water. For a moment I thought he might faint outright. Major Ashford shifted impatiently, as though the tension offended him, while Celia's eyes narrowed with sharp suspicion. I don't know, Fenwick stammered. Lady Harcourt often wrote notes, half-sentences. She was interrupted. Poirot's voice remained velvet, but beneath it there was steel. Interrupted. Yes, by death. But the hand had begun the thought. Fenwick, do not. What? Do not steal. Do not speak. Do not destroy. Brooke interposed quickly. Surely this is speculation. Fenwick is a clerk, nothing more. A clerk, Poirot murmured, who keeps the accounts. Who knows what is written in the missing ledger? Fenwick's hands trembled. It is only figures. Payments. Receipts. Poirot stepped closer. Then why remove it? No one answered. The silence thickened until Inspector Mallory, impatient with subtleties, barked. Enough. We'll find the ledger. Fenwick, you'll come with me for questions. Fenwick's face went grey. Must I? Mallory's expression was grim satisfaction. You must, and you'll answer. Poirot inclined his head politely. Inspector, perhaps allow me one small moment. Monsieur Fenwick, where was the ledger kept? In that drawer, he whispered. And always there? Yes, Lady Harcourt insisted. She said it was important. Poirot's eyes glittered. Important enough to kill for. Mallory seized Fenwick's arm and led him out. Brooke followed, murmuring about legal propriety. Celia remained rigid as marble. Poirot turned to me. Come, Hastings, we must not allow the inspector to trample like a bull in the china shop. There is a psychology here, delicate. What do you make of that torn note? I asked. Poirot tapped it thoughtfully against his palm. It is a warning, and warnings are written only when one suspects danger. We left the study. In the corridor, servants hovered in frightened knots. From downstairs came the murmur of voices, Mrs. March protesting softly, Briggs replying with dull firmness. Poirot paused outside a small table where a vase of lilies stood. One bloom had dropped a petal, marring the polished surface. With automatic precision, he lifted it away. "Order," he murmured. "Even now." Celia caught up with us. Her composure was cracking at last. "Monsieur Poirot, you cannot truly think Evelyn did this." "I think nothing yet, mademoiselle. I observe." "Then observe this. She adored my aunt. She was dependent on her. She had no reason." Poirot's eyes softened slightly. "Dependence is sometimes the strongest reason of all." Celia flushed. "That is cruel." Poirot bowed. "Truth is often cruel." She hesitated, then spoke in a lower voice. "The ledger, if it is missing, it must contain something improper." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Improper, yes. You know of this." She looked away. "My aunt had private matters, investments, people she supported." Major Ashford's voice boomed from behind. "Supported? That's one word for it." He came toward us, his expression half mocking, half angry. "Lady Harcourt was no saint, Poirot. She kept men in her pocket. Money passed under tables. I've seen it." Celia's eyes flashed. "How dare you speak so?" Ashford shrugged. "Truth, isn't it? Perhaps the ledger was her little book of sins." Poirot regarded him steadily. "And you, Major, are you written in this book?" Ashford's laugh was too loud. "Me? I'm an honest soldier." Poirot's moustaches twitched. "Honest men do not protest so much." Ashford's face darkened. "Watch yourself, little man." Poirot's voice did not rise. "Ah, Major, I am very small. But my little grey cells, they are sharp." Ashford turned away with an oath. Celia exhaled shakily. "He is unbearable," Poirot murmured. "He is afraid." "Afraid of what?" Poirot did not answer. We went downstairs to the morning room. Mrs. March sat under guard, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her eyes lifted when Poirot entered, pleading, "Monsieur Poirot? You believe me?" Poirot drew up a chair. "Madame, I believe nothing. I seek to understand. Tell me, when you carried the tea tray, did you notice anything strange?" She swallowed. "No, the cup was clean. The sugar bowl, everything as usual." "Who prepared it?" "The cook set it out. I added the cream." Poirot nodded. "And between the kitchen and the study, did you stop?" "No." "Did anyone speak to you?" She hesitated. "Miss Harcourt passed me on the stairs." Celia stiffened. "Yes, I did. I said good morning." Poirot's eyes flicked between them. "And did you touch the tray, mademoiselle?" "Of course not." Poirot's tone remained gentle. "Sometimes, without thinking, one steadies a cup." Celia's cheeks reddened. "I did not." Poirot leaned forward slightly. "Madame March, you screamed when you found the body. Why?" Her lips trembled. "Because I knew. The moment I saw her stillness, I knew she was dead. And I knew they would blame me." Poirot's gaze was intent. "Why would they blame you unless you already felt yourself surrounded by suspicion?" Tears sprang at last. "Because Lady Harcourt had threatened to dismiss me. She said she had discovered something in the accounts." Poirot became very still. "In the accounts, connected to Monsieur Fenwick." Mrs. March whispered. "She said the ledger proved someone had been stealing. She would confront him today." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Then perhaps, Hastings, we have found the motive for the missing book." At that instant, a crash sounded from the hall, followed by a shout. Briggs burst in, breathless. "Monsieur Poirot! Inspector Mallory, he's found something in Fenwick's room." Poirot rose smoothly. "Yes," he said softly, "the next move in the game." We hurried into the corridor, the tension in the house now like an invisible fog pressing against every wall. Servants stood clustered near the staircase, whispering behind their hands. Somewhere above, a door slammed sharply, as though the manor itself protested the intrusion of disorder. Inspector Mallory's voice rang out from the upper landing. "This way, quickly." Poirot ascended with his usual measured step. Though I could sense beneath his calm the quickening of thought, I followed close behind, my mind racing. Fenwick's room. What could Mallory have found? The missing ledger? Poison. Some damning evidence that would satisfy his blunt appetite for conclusions. Fenwick's bedroom was small, plainly furnished, the sort of room that belonged to a man who lived among figures rather than comforts. Papers were scattered across the bed now, drawers pulled open, the inspector's heavy-handed search leaving chaos in its wake. Mallory stood near the washstand, holding something between two fingers with grim triumph. "A bottle," he announced, "hidden behind the basin. And if I'm any judge, it's no harmless tonic." He thrust it toward Dr. Ellison, who had been summoned again. The doctor uncorked it, sniffed, and frowned. "It could contain something poisonous, yes. I'll need proper analysis, but—" Mallory cut him off. "Enough for me." Fenwick had poison. Lady Harcourt was poisoned. The ledger was missing. This is as neat as it gets. Fenwick, seated under guard, looked as though his bones had dissolved. "It's not mine," he whispered. "I've never seen it." Poirot's eyes moved not to the bottle, but to the inspector's hands. "You found it with such speed," Poirot remarked mildly. Mallory bristled. "Are you suggesting I planted it?" Poirot spread his hands. "Not at all. I suggest only that you see what you wish to see. The bottle is too convenient, Inspector. Murder is rarely so obliging." Mallory snorted. "Convenient or not, it's evidence." Poirot's gaze drifted across the room, his attention fixed on a stack of papers near the writing desk, some half-burned at the edges, as though rescued from a grate. He crossed to them at once. "These," he murmured. Mallory shrugged. "Old accounts. Nothing but nonsense columns." Poirot lifted one sheet carefully. The top bore Lady Harcourt's crest, and beneath it, neat handwriting Fenwick's. Poirot's voice was quiet. "Not nonsense. Transfers. Payments to names that are not servants, not tradesmen." He looked up sharply. "Major Rupert Ashford." A hush fell. Mallory frowned. "Ashford? What's his name doing there?" Fenwick's lips trembled. She lent him money." He was in difficulty. Poirot nodded. Difficulty. Always the polite word. Mallory's eyes gleamed. "Bring Ashford here." Within minutes the Major was hauled into the cramped room, his face thunderous. "What is this?" he demanded. "I've done nothing." Poirot held up the paper. "You have received payments from Lady Harcourt. Large payments." Ashford's jaw tightened. "Loans." "Loans," Poirot echoed. "And were they recorded in the missing ledger also?" Ashford's eyes flickered. Just once. Mallory seized on it like a dog on meat. "So you admit it? You were bleeding her dry, and when she threatened to expose you, you silenced her." Ashford's laugh was harsh. "Silenced her? Don't be ridiculous." "Yes. She lent me money. She was generous." Poirot's voice remained calm. "Generous women do not keep ledgers of generosity unless they fear betrayal." Ashford's face reddened. "What are you implying?" Poirot stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "I imply, Major, that Lady Harcourt was not merely a widow with accounts. She was a woman who understood power. The ledger was her weapon." Ashford's fists clenched. "And what of it? Plenty of people owed her. Brooke, for one. Fenwick, even Celia." Celia, standing at the doorway, stiffened. "That's a lie," Ashford sneered. "Is it? Your aunt held the purse strings. None of us were free." Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. "Ah, you speak truth there, Major. None of you were free." Mallory slammed his hand on the desk. "Enough philosophizing. Ashford, you'll be held as well." Ashford's expression turned dangerous. "You can't hold me without proof." Mallory's smile was grim. "Poison in Fenwick's room. Payments in your name. Missing ledger. I'll find proof soon enough." Poirot murmured softly, almost to himself. "Or you will find the wrong culprit soon enough." Ashford was led away, still protesting. Fenwick sagged in his chair, whispering prayers. Poirot turned to me as we stepped back into the corridor. "You see, Hastings?" The inspector rushes toward the obvious. Fenwick with poison, Ashford with motive. But the truth, she is more subtle. But surely one of them. Poirot shook his head. The poison bottle is too placed. The papers half burned, why not destroyed entirely? Someone wished them found. I frowned. To frame Ashford? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Perhaps, or to distract from what matters most. The ledger, I said. Poirot nodded slowly. Yes, the ledger is the heart. Without it, we chase shadows. At that moment, a servant girl came running up, pale and breathless. Monsieur Poirot. They found something in the library behind the panelling. Mallory, striding up behind us, barked, "What now?" The girl swallowed. "A book, sir, hidden away, and there's blood on it." Poirot became very still. "Blood?" he repeated softly. Then, with quiet certainty, he said, "Ah, so. The game grows darker." We followed at once, down the corridor and into the library, where the air always smelled faintly of leather and dust, as though old secrets lingered among the books. The servants stood pressed together near the doorway, their faces pale with the thrill of horror. Inspector Mallory pushed past them, his boots heavy on the carpet, and Poirot came behind with his usual delicate composure. On the Persian rug near the far wall lay a thick volume bound in dark green. One glance told me it was no ordinary book. Its cover bore no title, only a small gilt crest, Lady Harcourt's. Mallory crouched and seized it, turning it over. "The ledger," he said triumphantly. But Poirot's eyes had already fixed on the dark stain smeared across the edge of the cover. "It is blood," Poirot murmured. Dr. Ellison, summoned again, bent down, his face grave. He touched the stain with a gloved finger. "Yes, fresh. Not from Lady Harcourt, though. She bore no wound." Mallory straightened sharply. "Then someone else has been hurt." A murmur rippled through the servants. Celia, who had followed, pressed a hand to her mouth. Poirot's voice was soft. "Or someone wished us to think so," Mallory snapped. "You think everything is a performance," Poirot inclined his head. "In a house of secrets, Inspector, there is always performance." Mallory opened the ledger at once, flipping through pages covered in neat columns and names. His finger jabbed at an entry. "Look here. Payments to Ashford. Payments to Brooke." And his eyes widened slightly. "Payments to Mrs. March." Celia gasped. "Evelyn." Mallory's mouth tightened. So the devoted companion was receiving money as well. Perhaps blackmail. Perhaps hush money. Motive enough. Poirot stepped closer, his gaze sharp. "Inspector, you read only the names, but what of the handwriting?" Mallory frowned. "What about it?" Poirot pointed. "These entries are not all by the same hand." Dr. Ellison peered. "He's right. Some are written more heavily." Mallory's impatience flared. "So what? Clerks write in books." Poirot's eyes gleamed. Lady Harcourt insisted this ledger never left her possession. Yet here are at least two hands. One is Fenwick's, certainly. The other— His voice trailed off, thoughtful. Celia's face was strained. "Monsieur Poirot, what does it mean?" "It means," Poirot said gently, "that someone else wrote in the widow's book. Someone close enough, bold enough." Mallory closed the ledger with a snap. "Enough. This proves the financial web. Ashford is finished. Brooke too, perhaps. And Mrs. March." Poirot interrupted softly. "Inspector, where was the ledger found?" The servant girl answered timidly, "Behind the panel, sir." "Mr. Fenwick showed us there was a loose board." Mallory's eyes narrowed. "Fenwick showed you?" The girl nodded. He said perhaps she hid it there." Mallory's face hardened. "Convenient again." "Fenwick leads us to the hiding place of the missing book, stained with blood, and you still say he is not guilty." Fenwick, standing under guard, shook violently. "I didn't put it there. I swear. I only knew the panel was loose because Lady Harcourt sometimes kept papers." Poirot's gaze was fixed on Fenwick, searching, weighing. Then Poirot said quietly, "Monsieur Fenwick, when did you last see the ledger before today?" Fenwick swallowed. "Yesterday afternoon. She was writing in it. She dismissed me afterward. And this morning, I was in the accounts room until 10. Then Inspector Mallory took me." Poirot nodded slowly. Mallory barked. "And what about the blood? Explain that." Fenwick's voice broke. "I cannot." Poirot murmured. Perhaps you do not need to. Celia stepped forward suddenly, her voice sharp. This is madness. We are all being accused because of money. But my aunt, she was not murdered for loans alone. Poirot turned to her. You believe there is more? Celia hesitated, then spoke with effort. She told me last week. She said she had discovered something unforgivable, something that would ruin one of us. Mallory's eyes gleamed. Who? Celia shook her head. She would not say, only that she had written it down. Poirot's gaze fell at once to the ledger, and perhaps, he murmured, that is why it vanished. Mallory snapped. We have it now. Poirot's voice was soft. Do we? Or do we have what someone wishes us to have? Mallory stared. What are you suggesting? Poirot leaned closer, lowering his voice so only I and Celia could hear. This blood is too theatrical. It is a signal. Someone wants urgency, confusion. And see, he touched the edge of the cover delicately. The smear is careless, unlike Lady Harcourt's order. Mallory scoffed. You think the killer staged it? Poirot smiled faintly. The killer plays chess, Inspector. You play drafts. Mallory flushed with anger, but before he could retort, a sharp cry echoed from the hall. Help! Someone has fallen. We rushed out. In the marble-floored vestibule, Mrs. March lay crumpled at the foot of the stairs, her face ashen, her eyes half closed. A servant knelt beside her, frantic. She collapsed. She was running. Dr. Ellison pushed forward, bending down swiftly. He pressed fingers to her pulse, then looked up, grim. She's alive, but barely conscious. Mallory's jaw tightened. Trying to flee, no doubt. Poirot's eyes, however, were fixed on Mrs. March's hand. Between her fingers was clutched a small scrap of paper, torn and crumpled. Poirot gently eased it free. On it, in hurried handwriting, were the words, Don't trust the ledger. It is not the only book. Poirot's face became very still. Ah, he murmured, now we approach the truth. Dr. Ellison and two servants carried Mrs. March into the nearest sitting room, laying her upon a chaise longue. Her breathing was shallow, her lashes fluttering as though she struggled against a darkness pulling her under. Poirot stood at her side, watching with an intensity that made the scene feel less like an illness and more like an interrogation of fate itself. Mallory's voice was hard. She was running. That looks very much like guilt. Poirot did not look up. Or fear, Inspector. Fear is often mistaken for guilt by those who do not understand the heart. Ellison loosened Mrs. March's collar. Shock, he muttered, or perhaps something administered. She is cold. Poirot's eyes sharpened. Administered? The doctor frowned. It is possible. Her pupils are strange. Mallory swore. Poison again. Poirot's voice was soft. If so, then the murderer is not content with one victim. Celia hovered near the doorway, her face pale. Will she die? Ellison shook his head. Not if she is left undisturbed, but she may not speak for some time. Poirot's fingers closed gently around the scrap of paper he had taken from her hand. He unfolded it once more, reading the words as though they might rearrange themselves into clearer meaning. Don't trust the ledger. It is not the only book, I whispered. What does it mean, Poirot? He glanced at me. It means, Hastings, that Lady Harcourt's secrets were written in more than one place, and that someone wishes very much that we look only at what is convenient. Mallory snorted. More riddles. We have the ledger, we have poison, we have suspects drowning in motive. I'll arrest Fenwick and Ashford before nightfall. Poirot's gaze was steady. Arrest whom you like, Inspector, but do not imagine you have solved anything. The ledger was planted for you, like meat for a dog. Mallory's face darkened. You have no proof of that. Poirot smiled faintly. Not yet. He turned away from the chaise longue and moved toward the window, where the afternoon light fell in clean squares upon the carpet. Outside, the gardens remained tranquil, indifferent to human wickedness. Poirot spoke softly, almost to himself. Lady Harcourt was a woman who loved control. She kept books, yes, but she also kept people. Celia's voice trembled. Are you saying she blackmailed us? Poirot turned his head. I say only that she knew too much. Knowledge is the most dangerous possession. Mallory barked. Enough philosophy. Brooke, Fenwick, bring them down here. I want them all in one room. Within minutes, the household had gathered in uneasy silence. Celia rigid with contained fury. Fenwick trembling like a leaf. Brooke composed but sweating faintly at the temples. Major Ashford defiant with eyes that darted too often, and servants lingering at the edges like shadows. Mallory stood before them like a judge. Lady Harcourt is dead by poison. The ledger was hidden. Blood was found on it. Mrs. March collapses while attempting to flee. I intend to know why. Ashford laughed harshly. Perhaps because she's guilty. Fenwick whispered, I did not poison anyone. Brooke cleared his throat. Inspector, we must proceed carefully. Accusations without evidence. Mallory snapped. Evidence is precisely what we have. Poirot raised a hand gently. Inspector, may I ask one question before you condemn? Mallory's eyes narrowed. One. Poirot's gaze swept the group. Who here knew of the loose panel in the library? Fenwick swallowed. Lady Harcourt. And I, because she sometimes, Ashford interrupted. I knew. I've been in that room often enough. Celia's eyes flashed. You were always prowling. Ashford shrugged. Curiosity. Brooke spoke carefully. I did not know. Poirot's eyes rested on him. Not even though you were her solicitor, Monsieur Brooke? She did not show you her hiding places. Brooke stiffened. No. Poirot nodded slowly. And Mrs. March? Celia answered bitterly. Evelyn knew everything in this house. Poirot's moustaches quivered. Then many hands could have placed the ledger, Mallory growled. Or many hands could be lying. Poirot's voice remained mild. Exactly. He stepped forward, holding the ledger. Inspector, you opened it and saw money. But money is only the surface. Let us look deeper. He flipped to the back pages. There, the handwriting changed abruptly. Larger, hurried, uneven. Poirot tapped the ink with one finger. These entries were not made by Lady Harcourt, nor by Fenwick. Fenwick shook his head wildly. Not by me. Ashford's eyes narrowed. Then by whom? Poirot's gaze moved, slow and deliberate, until it rested upon Celia. She stiffened. Me? That's absurd. Poirot's tone was gentle. Mademoiselle, you are family. You had access. You were angry at dependence. Perhaps you wrote what you wished recorded. Celia's cheeks burned. I would never. Poirot inclined his head. Perhaps not. But someone did. Brooke spoke sharply. This is going nowhere. Poirot's eyes flashed. On the contrary, Monsieur Brooke, it goes exactly where it must, toward the question, what was Lady Harcourt about to reveal? Silence fell again. Then, from the chaise longue came a faint movement. Mrs. March's eyes fluttered open. Her lips parted. Poirot leaned close, his voice barely above a whisper. Madam, who cannot we trust? Her gaze fixed on him with desperate clarity. She whispered. The solicitor. Brooke went utterly still. Poirot straightened slowly, and for the first time his calm carried something chilling. Ah, he murmured. Now the mask begins to slip. For an instant nobody moved, as though Mrs. March's whisper had frozen the air. Brooke's face, so carefully arranged into professional composure, showed a minute tightening around the mouth. I should have missed it had Poirot not been watching him with that grave, almost compassionate attention. Inspector Mallory took one step forward. What did she say? Poirot answered mildly. She says, Inspector, that we must not trust the solicitor. Brooke's voice was smooth. Delirium. The poor woman has suffered shock. She speaks at random. Mrs. March stirred, trying to lift her head, but Ellison pressed her gently back. Hush now. Her eyes remained on Brooke. He told her not to open the other book, she breathed. The other book. Poirot repeated softly. Yes. Celia gave a short, strained laugh. This is ridiculous. Mr. Brooke has managed my aunt's affairs for years. Years, said Poirot. And in years, many things may be hidden. Mallory's patience snapped. Brooke! You'll answer questions. Where were you between 9 and 11? In my room, Brooke said at once. Writing letters. Ask the maid who brought my tray. Ah, the tray, Poirot murmured. We have many trays today. Ashford's eyes glittered. Convenient. Everyone has an alibi and a tray. Brooke swung on him. "Do not divert attention, Major. Your name appears again and again in that ledger." "I owe money," Ashford growled. "That doesn't make me a murderer." Poirot raised a hand. "Monsieur, we confuse motive with method. Inspector, allow me one question to Monsieur Brooke." Mallory hesitated, then jerked his head. "One." Poirot stepped close, his voice gentle. "Monsieur Brooke, did Lady Harcourt keep a private safe?" Brooke blinked. "A safe?" "Yes, built into the wall of her study. I advised it." "And who knew the combination?" "Lady Harcourt. And I for emergencies." Poirot nodded. "An emergency such as her death. Was it open today?" Brooke hesitated. I do not know." Poirot's gaze stayed on him. "Then let us go and see." Mallory barked. "Fine. We'll search the study properly. If there's another book, we'll find it." We moved through the corridor. The house felt altered. Every creak accusatory, every portrait listening. In the study, Lady Harcourt sat still in her chair, authority reduced to silence. Mallory strode to the paneling by the fireplace and rapped it. "A safe, you said?" Brooke pointed stiffly. "Behind that panel." Mallory ordered Briggs to fetch tools. Poirot did not wait. He examined the seams, the exact line where panel met wall, then pressed a spot that seemed no different from any other. There was a soft click. The panel sprang open. Mallory stared. "How?" Poirot smiled faintly. "Those who love order leave patterns. The panel aligns with the skirting." Inside was a small steel safe. A dial gleamed. Poirot did not touch it. He looked to Brooke. "Monsieur," Brooke's throat worked, "I told you I do not know if it's been opened." Poirot's voice remained polite. "But you know the numbers." Celia stepped forward. "Mr. Brooke, open it. If it clears you, you should want it opened." Brooke's eyes flicked to Mallory, then to Poirot. At last he turned the dial. His fingers were not perfectly steady. The safe clicked open. Mallory swung the door wide. Inside lay a bundle of letters tied with ribbon, and on top, a slim notebook bound in grey, like an ordinary diary. Poirot's eyes brightened. "The other book." Mallory snatched it, flipping pages. "This isn't accounts. It's notes." Poirot leaned over his shoulder. Lady Harcourt's handwriting marched across the paper. Observations, suspicions, small, cruel truths. I caught phrases. Ashford, desperate, debts. Fenwick, skimming, frightened. Celia, resentful, will contest. And then lower down. Brooke, false papers, trust deed, danger. Brooke made a sound like a choked breath. Mallory looked up sharply. False papers. Poirot reached out and removed the ribboned letters. "These," he murmured, "may be the papers." He untied the ribbon. The top sheet bore Brooke's letterhead. Poirot read, then turned it so Mallory could see the signature. Lady Harcourt's, bold, yet the slant was wrong, the pressure uneven, as if traced by a careful hand. "A forgery," Ellison murmured. Celia gasped. "Mr. Brooke." Brooke's composure cracked. "Impossible," he said hoarsely. "She signed them. She must have." Poirot's voice was very quiet. "She must have signed them, yes. Or you signed for her. And when she refused to be robbed, when she wrote her warning, 'Fenwick, do not,' perhaps she meant, 'Do not trust Brooke.'" Mallory's hand dropped to his pocket. "Brooke, you're coming with me." Brooke's eyes darted toward the door. For a moment the room held its breath. Then Poirot said softly, "Do not run, monsieur. Running is an admission." Brooke's shoulders sagged a fraction. In that sag I saw not innocence wounded, but calculation recalculating. Yet even as Mallory stepped nearer, Poirot's gaze shifted to the desk drawer again, as if expecting another absence at once. Mallory's hand closed on Brooke's arm, and for a moment I thought the matter settled in the plain fashion the inspector loved. Brooke did not struggle, but the skin around his eyes tightened. One felt the swift calculating behind the polished forehead. "Inspector," Poirot said gently, "before you march away with your prisoner, permit me one caution." Mallory snapped. "What now?" "That you do not yet possess the key to the poison." Brooke lifted his chin. "At last, someone speaks sense. Forgery is one thing, murder is another." Poirot regarded him with mild courtesy. "One may be a thief without being a murderer. One may also be both. But tell me, Inspector, why the blood on the ledger? Mallory frowned. We'll find whose it is. Yes, said Poirot, and we need not look far. Blood is rarely painted on with artistry. Often it begins as an accident, then becomes a signal when the accident is noticed. He crossed to the desk and opened a side drawer. From it he drew a small silver paper knife. Along the edge faintly ran a reddish smear, as if hastily wiped. Celia made a little sound. Was that? Poirot nodded. A man handles a heavy book, reaches into an awkward place, his hand slips. He cuts himself. He wipes the blade, but not well. Later, realizing the mistake, he smears the ledger, just enough to be seen, so the stain looks deliberate, dramatic. Brooke's voice was dry. An entertaining story. Poirot's eyes turned to him. Show me your right hand, monsieur. This is absurd, Brooke began. Mallory forced the solicitor's palm open. Across the base of the thumb ran a thin cut. Fresh and poorly dressed. Mallory muttered, Damn. Brooke's composure cracked. Broken glass. In my bathroom. This morning. Perhaps, Poirot agreed, or a ledger. But I do not condemn you on a paper cut. I condemn you on your habits. He stepped nearer, speaking softly, as if offering advice rather than accusation. You are a man who believes he is the cleverest in the room. You forged signatures because you trusted your own hand more than Lady Harcourt's eye. You arranged evidence, Fenwick's bottle, Ashford's papers, because you trusted the inspector to see only what he wished to see. Brooke's eyes flashed. You have no proof I arranged anything. Poirot lifted the grey notebook from the safe and turned to a page near the end. Lady Harcourt did what you did not expect. She kept notes of people. Here she writes, Brooke insists I drink the tea, watches. A silence fell so complete. I heard the clock's small ticking. Mallory's voice was hoarse. You offered her tea? Brooke snapped. She drank tea every day. And yet, Poirot said quietly, she noted your insistence. You were in her study this morning. Brooke hesitated, only the fraction of a second, but Poirot seized it as a fisherman seizes a tug on the line. You interrupted her while she wrote. He continued. You saw the warning begin, Fenwick. Do not trust Brooke. You removed the ledger. You opened the safe to search for the other book. You did not have time to take it, so you turned to what was already prepared, the tray. Mallory growled. Briggs, search Brooke's room. Now. Briggs hurried out. Brooke stood very straight, his face pale, his eyes burning with anger and something colder. You think you are brilliant, Monsieur Poirot, he said softly. But you cannot prove poison, and you cannot prove my hand touched that cup. Poirot bowed slightly. Then we shall find it. Because you have made one mistake. Brooke's lips tightened. What mistake? You believed only Lady Harcourt kept records, Poirot murmured. But accountants keep them too. At that moment Briggs returned, breathless, holding a small packet of white crystals wrapped in paper. Found in Mr. Brooke's washbag, sir. Dr. Ellison took it, sniffed once, and went very pale. This is no common salt. Poirot's eyes shone with quiet certainty. Now, Inspector, he said, you may march. Mallory's face hardened. You'll come quietly, Brooke, or I'll have you carried. Briggs moved behind the solicitor. For a heartbeat I thought Brooke might fling himself for the window, his shoulders tensed, and his gaze flicked to the latch. Poirot, without seeming to hurry, placed himself so the line to the window was no longer clear. Do not, he said softly. Running is always an extra confession. Brooke's breath came sharp. This proves nothing. Any man might have such a packet. Rat poison, disinfectant. Ellison cut in curt. Not in that form, and not with Lady Harcourt dead of alkaloid. Celia whispered. So my aunt was right. Poirot's eyes stayed on Brooke, watching the mask melt. And still, he murmured, we must find who helped you, because one man alone cannot make these little dramas appear on cue. The house, I felt, held its breath. Brooke was taken away at last, his wrists held in Briggs's firm grasp, while Mallory strode beside him with the satisfaction of a man who sees the world simplify. Yet as the footsteps faded down the corridor, Poirot did not share the inspector's triumph. He stood very still, his head slightly bowed, listening for what had not yet been said. Celia drew a shaky breath. Then it's over? Poirot's eyes met hers. Mademoiselle, when a man is caught with poison, it is not always the end. Sometimes it is the beginning of what he wished you not to see. Ashford gave a snort. You think it's a frame? I think, said Poirot softly, that it is a net. We have caught one fish. There may be another still in the water. Dr. Ellison cleared his throat. If you suspect an accomplice, Monsieur Poirot, Mrs. Poirot, March's collapse becomes more sinister. Poirot nodded. Someone feared what she would say. Celia's voice trembled. She said she didn't trust Brooke. It shows motive, Poirot replied. Not method. Tell me, Hastings, who made the tea. In the kitchen. I said. The cook set it out. Mrs. March carried it. She added cream. Poirot's eyes brightened. Ah, the cream. A small thing. Always the small things. He moved toward the door. Come, we will go to the kitchen. The murderer does not live only in the study, Hastings. He visits the pantry. The kitchen was warm, smelling of bread and boiled vegetables, a domestic comfort that seemed grotesque beside the cold fact upstairs. The cook, Mrs. Toller, stood red-faced and indignant, wiping her hands on her apron. I've served this house 15 years, she declared. I won't be spoken to like a criminal. Poirot bowed. Madam, I ask only. This morning, who handled the tea things? The tray was laid by me, she said. The cup, the pot, the sugar. Then Mrs. March took it. And the cream. The cream jug was on the tray. Poirot's eyes flicked to a shelf where china jugs stood in a neat line. Always the same jug. Mrs. Toller hesitated. Usually. Poirot murmured, is a word that hides mischief. Today, was it the same? The cook frowned. No, the blue-rimmed one was chipped, so I used the plain white. Poirot nodded as though she had confessed to murder. And where is the chipped jug? In the scullery, waiting to be mended. In the scullery, among damp cloths and stacked plates, Poirot found the blue-rimmed jug. A hairline crack ran along its handle, and on the inside, just beneath the lip, a faint powdery residue clung where liquid might have dried. Poirot inhaled softly. There, you see? I stared. Poison. Not in the cream, Poirot said. In the jug. A clever person chooses the vessel that will touch what is poured. Mrs. March pours. Yes, but from a jug already prepared. Mrs. Toller's face whitened. Are you accusing my staff? I accuse no one, Poirot said. Who knew the jug was chipped? Who would expect it replaced today? The cook's lips trembled. Only me, and Evelyn, perhaps. She comes in sometimes. Poirot's eyes sharpened. Mrs. March came into the kitchen. Yes, last evening. She asked for chamomile. She said Lady Harcourt couldn't sleep. Poirot nodded slowly, and she was alone a moment. Ashford's voice was sharp. So it was March after all. Poirot's gaze turned cold. No, Major. If Mrs. March were the murderer, she would not warn us with her last strength. She would let the ledger do its work. He lifted the jug carefully with his handkerchief. Ellison will test it. But already I know, the poison travelled by a path meant to look innocent. As we left, Poirot's eyes drifted to the servants' corridor. A door stood ajar, and through it I saw a figure retreat. Quiet, swift, like a shadow that did not wish to be seen. Poirot's voice was barely audible. Hastings, we have frightened someone, and frightened people make mistakes. He did not run. Poirot never ran, but he moved with surprising quickness, his feet making little sound on the passage. I followed, my pulse loud in my ears. The figure had vanished behind the green baize door to the service stairs. From below came a soft scrape, then a hurried closing of a cupboard. A servant boy appeared, wide-eyed, a coal scuttle in his hands. You are late with that, Poirot said mildly. The boy's gaze flicked past us toward the scullery, then down again. Yes, sir, he muttered, and slipped away. Poirot opened the cupboard under the stairs. Behind cleaning cloths lay a small glass vial, empty, its cork faintly stained brown. He held it up. Not Brooks, he murmured. A second container hidden just now. And that means our accomplice still walks free in this house. Poirot turned the little vial between finger and thumb, studying it as though it were a rare insect pinned for display. The cupboard under the stairs smelled of soap and coal dust, an honest smell, yet the object in his hand was not honest at all. "Someone hid it just now," I said. "Precisely," Poirot replied. "And who hides? Not the man already marched away under the eyes of the police. Another." A quieter hand. He replaced the cloths exactly as he had found them and closed the cupboard with care. Far above, the clock chimed the quarter hour, crisp and indifferent. "We must speak with the servant boy," I urged. Poirot shook his head. "If we rush, he runs to his burrow. We must make him believe we do not hunt." He walked back toward the kitchen at an unhurried pace, and I followed, impatient. In the scullery, Dr. Ellison was preparing a simple test. The blue-rimmed cream jug sat on the table beside an evidence bag. Ellison glanced up. "There's something bitter here. Only a trace would do it." Inspector Mallory strode in, his face eager. "Good. That nails March." Poirot's eyes were mild. "Or it nails the person who prepared the jug, knowing Mrs. March would carry it." "Inspector, are the servants all accounted for?" Mallory frowned. "As well as can be. Why?" Poirot lifted the empty vial slightly. "Because someone in your net still swims." Mallory stared. "Where did you get that?" "From a cupboard," Poirot said. "A cupboard visited a moment before we opened it." Mallory's jaw tightened. "You're suggesting someone's destroying evidence." "I suggest," Poirot said softly, "that someone is afraid, and fear makes clumsy fingers." Celia entered then, eyes bright with anger and grief. "Inspector, you cannot arrest half the house because of a ledger." Mallory cut her off. "Then help me by staying out of the way." Poirot's voice soothed. "Mademoiselle, did Lady Harcourt trust any servant beyond the others?" Celia hesitated. "Carter. The butler. He served my uncle. Aunt Sylvia said he was steady." Poirot nodded once, as if a thought had clicked into place. "Thank you," Mallory snorted. "Now you'll accuse the butler as well." Poirot smiled faintly. "In stories, perhaps. In life, the butler often sees what others ignore." As if summoned by the remark, Carter himself appeared in the doorway, tall, immaculate, his expression trained to neutrality. Yet I noticed the tiniest tremor at the corner of his mouth when he saw the vial in Poirot's hand. "Inspector," Carter said smoothly, "the telephone is for you. Scotland Yard." Mallory muttered and departed, his boots thudding away. Poirot watched Carter as one watches a man crossing thin ice. "Monsieur Carter, you have served long." 22 years, sir. Then you know Lady Harcourt's habits." Poirot said gently. "You know which cream jug is chipped, and which would be replaced. You know the passages where one may move without being seen." Carter's eyes did not flinch. "I know the routine, Monsieur Poirot. And you also know," Poirot murmured, "how to deliver a drink that no one questions." A faint color rose under Carter's skin. "I do not understand." Poirot lifted the vial. "Whose is this?" "I have never seen it." Poirot sighed, almost regretful. "It is a pity, because if you had told me the truth, perhaps I could have saved someone." Carter's gaze sharpened. "Saved whom?" Poirot turned his head slightly toward the corridor that led upstairs. "Mrs. March is weak. If she dies, the last warning dies with her, and the person who frightened her into silence will be safe." For an instant, Carter's composure slipped into something like panic. It vanished at once, but it was enough. Poirot's voice remained quiet. "You went to her room, did you not? You carried something. Perhaps a cordial, perhaps a draught. You are the butler. People accept what you carry." Carter's hand clenched, then relaxed. "Monsieur Poirot, you go too far." "No," Poirot said, and there was steel now. "I go exactly far enough. You helped Monsieur Brooke because he promised you security, or because he held something over you. Lady Harcourt wrote names in her other book, and you feared yours." Carter's breathing stayed controlled, but his eyes were bright. "You have no right," Poirot inclined his head. "I have the right of truth, and now you will come with us to Mrs. March. We will ask her, while she can still answer, who brought her the drink." For a heartbeat, Carter did not move. Then, with a suddenness that shocked me, he turned and bolted for the service stairs. Poirot did not chase. He only raised his voice clearly. "Inspector Mallory." Footsteps thundered. A shout answered. Somewhere below, a door banged open. Carter's flight had begun, and with it the next turn of the affair. Carter's escape did not last long. A man may run swiftly in a moment of panic, but a manor house is full of dead ends, and a guilty conscience is the heaviest burden of all. Mallory and Briggs caught him near the servants' entrance, where he stood cornered, his chest rising and falling, the last of his composure stripped away. His immaculate cuffs were smudged, his perfect order undone. Poirot arrived a moment later, not breathless, not hurried, only grave. "It is finished, Monsieur Carter," he said softly. "Do not make it uglier." Carter's lips curled. "Finished? You think you know everything?" Poirot's eyes were gentle. "Not everything, only enough." Mallory snapped. "We've got him, Poirot. Now you can tell us what game he was playing." Poirot inclined his head. "Yes, it is time." That evening, with the house sunk into a fearful hush, Poirot requested that all remaining suspects gather in the drawing-room. The lamps were lit, casting warm light over cold faces. Lady Harcourt's chair sat empty, a silent accusation. Celia stood rigid by the mantel. Major Ashford lounged with forced carelessness, though his eyes betrayed strain. Fenwick sat trembling, hands clasped. Dr. Ellison remained near the door. Inspector Mallory stood with the impatience of a man who wanted handcuffs, not speeches. And Carter, pale and beaten, was held under guard. Poirot took his place before them, smoothing his moustaches with ritual precision. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began quietly, "when a woman such as Lady Harcourt is murdered, one must ask not only how but why." Mallory muttered. "Money." Poirot nodded. "Yes, money. But money is rarely simple. It is power, control, fear." He turned slightly toward Fenwick. Monsieur Fenwick skimmed from the accounts. "Small sums. Enough to ease his life, not enough to ruin the estate. Lady Harcourt discovered it. She wrote her warning. 'Fenwick, do not,' because she meant, 'Do not do this again, or do not trust those who will use you.' Fenwick sobbed. 'I never meant harm.'" Poirot's gaze shifted. Major Ashford was drowning in debt. Lady Harcourt lent him money, and she recorded it carefully. Not generosity, leverage. He feared exposure. Yes, but fear alone does not make a murderer. He is loud, reckless, not subtle enough for poison, and planted evidence. Ashford's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Poirot turned toward Celia. Mademoiselle Celia resented dependence. She loved her aunt, perhaps, but she also wished for freedom. Yet she did not kill. Her anger was open, not hidden. Celia's eyes glistened. Then who? Poirot let the silence stretch. Lady Harcourt's true enemy was the man who stood closest to her authority. He looked toward the empty chair. She trusted Monsieur Brooke with her legal affairs, and Monsieur Brooke betrayed that trust. Brooke, already under arrest, was not present, but his shadow seemed to linger. Poirot continued. He forged papers. He siphoned wealth through false deeds. Lady Harcourt discovered it and began keeping a second book, her private record. She meant to confront him, perhaps dismiss him, perhaps ruin him. Mallory grunted. "So Brooke poisoned her." Poirot lifted a finger. "Brooke planned it, but Brooke was not alone." He turned slowly to Carter. Monsieur Carter was the butler, the guardian of routine. He knew which jug would be replaced. He knew how trays moved unseen. And Brooke had something over him. Carter's face twisted. "He would have destroyed me." Poirot nodded. "Yes, because Carter too had been stealing. Not money, information. He listened. He carried messages. He became Brooke's instrument." Mallory snapped. "So Carter prepared the poison." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "No, Brooke provided it. Carter administered it." A murmur rippled through the room. Poirot's voice remained calm. "The poison was placed not in the tea itself, but in the cream jug, knowing Mrs. March would pour without suspicion. Mrs. March was innocent, but she was the perfect carrier. Mrs. March, weak but alive, sat propped in an armchair now, watched by Ellison. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Poirot softened. She realized too late that she had been used. She tried to warn us. That is why someone attempted to silence her. Mallory's jaw tightened. "Carter." Poirot nodded. And then, to distract the investigation, Brooke removed the ledger, smeared it with blood from his own cut hand, and planted evidence against Fenwick and Ashford. He believed the inspector would seize the easiest answer. Mallory flushed angrily. Poirot inclined his head politely. "It is no shame, Inspector. It is human." He stepped closer to Carter. "And you, Monsieur Carter, you ran because the mask slipped. A guilty man always runs when the little grey cells close in." Carter's shoulders sagged. "Yes," he whispered. "I carried the tray. I thought it would be only a faint illness. Brooke said she would sign papers, then retire quietly. But she died so quickly." Celia let out a broken sound. Poirot's voice was gentle, almost sorrowful. "Murder is never tidy, no matter how orderly the murderer wishes it." Mallory gestured sharply. "Take him away." As Carter was led out, Poirot turned back to the room. Lady Harcourt lived by control. In the end, control became the very thing that killed her. She held people with secrets, with debts, with fear. And fear, mes amis, is the most dangerous poison of all. The drawing-room fell silent. Celia whispered, "And my aunt, did she deserve it?" Poirot's eyes softened. "No one deserves murder." But Lady Harcourt forgot that power does not protect against the darkness in the human heart. He took his hat, adjusting it with perfect care. Outside, the night was cool, the manor's windows glowing like watchful eyes. As we walked toward the door, I said quietly, "You solved it, Poirot. Even with so many false trails." Poirot gave a small, weary smile. "Ah, Hastings, the trails were false, yes, but the motives were always true. People lie with words, with ledgers, with blood, but they cannot lie with fear." He paused at the threshold, looking back once. "Order," he murmured, "is a beautiful thing, but it is not the same as goodness." Then, with impeccable composure, Hercule Poirot stepped into the night, leaving Wycliffe Manor and its poisoned secrets behind.